Well, welcome to another edition of Rolling the Bones Around the Cage. What do you say, Val?
Hey, Chris. What's up? What's going on? Anything going on?
Oh, broadcasting from Northern Kentucky. Got my sweet tea. Hello, Crazy Witch, Standing Stones, Chris.
My family just got back from Kentucky this week.
All right.
They were down there
Catherine.
throwing some change around in Kentucky for you guys.
Oh, Gary Spikes, welcome. Hello, everybody. Oh, gambling. Were they at the racetrack or just the slot machine?
just camping. They went to the Ark, went down to the mine, the bucket mine, and things like that. Just seeing some sights and stuff.
Interesting.
Having a good time.
So what's been going on with you?
Working on my camper, getting that ready, changing the lights out, doing all the manly things with that thing. I mean, I'm not a camper.
You gonna put a bunch of floodlights on it?
Well, you know what I did, Grizz? I swapped out the old lights. This is a 2009. I got a pretty good deal on it. 2009, 19 and a half foot, Flagstaff Shamrock, and I'm swapping out the lights. I'm putting LEDs on them, taking out the old bulbs and stuff. I mean, I don't know, maybe fix it up and sell it and get something a little more camper ready. Let's put it that way. You know, just doing stuff like that, piddling around.
Welcome, Roger, and everybody to the show. Nice to have everybody. And Rebecca. What do you mean? You just got it. I thought we was going to go Bigfootering.
We're going to do that. We're going to
maybe sneak around in the bush a little bit, and
I kind of felt bad because my friend has a 34-foot camper. I mean, this looks like a condominium on wheels. Flat screen TV, pull out sides, master bedroom suite, full kitchen. Val, he says, this is pretty raggedy. Made me feel bad. Me feel bad. But I said, brother, don't you remember the first camper you ever bought? Oh, yeah. He says, I fell out of the sleeper portion, the pull out.
All right.
I fell right through it. I was naked out there in the campground in the middle of a storm. That's the first one I bought. So I says, you step up from there, you learn and you progress and you just keep moving. Now you got a beautiful camper.
Wow.
So anyways, that's the way it is.
And your video went out. I don't know what it is with you and me and your video. So what we got lined up today?
We have Miss Kathy Strain coming in. She's an author. I know her from my Bigfoot forum days, and she'll be an interesting interview. She wrote a book about monsters, cannibals, and Indian lore. She'll tell you about it when she comes on.
All right, let's go ahead and bring her on. Kathy, welcome to the show. Come on down.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. Tell us all about yourself.
I live in California, and I am a forest archaeologist with the United States Forest Service in Sonora, California. I have a bachelor's and a master's in anthropology, and been doing archaeology professionally for over 35 years. And then been interested in Bigfoot since I was a little girl when I saw Legend of Bucky Creek, and decided that's what I wanted to do, was to study Bigfoot for a living. And I asked my teacher how I could do that, and she said, well, you'll probably have to go into anthropology. And so that's what I did. And and I figured it out. Nobody was going to pay me to study Bigfoot for a living, but it was part of my DNA anyway. I was always an outdoors person, and when we went on vacations, we went to national parks and forests. We didn't go to like Disneyland or any of that stuff, so it was pretty natural. So, and I've been married to my husband Bob for nearly 20 years, and he's into Bigfoot too. And we got 2 kids, and only one of them is interested in Bigfoot. The other one's like mixed faces.
Interesting.
So, Kathy, the the title of your book, by the way, it's got a great cover on it. Giants, Cannibals, and Monsters. And you and I were talking off air, and this is the second edition of this book. The first edition sold out.
Yes, that's correct. And it's a collection of traditional stories that Native Americans throughout the United States and Canada have about Bigfoot. So, what their traditional belief systems are.
Mhm.
And I don't take away or enhance them. They're as recorded by anthropologists in the 1900s, 1910s, those kinds of dates that preceded modern day Bigfoot. Jerry Crew in 1958, when Bigfoot became a more common, not name, but more commonly known throughout the United States than he was previously, except in localized areas where tribal members would tell people living in the town about this, hairy monster that lived up in the woods, and they knew that natives talked about him, that it wasn't a worldwide phenomena until 1958, and then 1967 with the Roger and Bob film. And really, in a lot of ways, for me, culturally, I think it was Finding Bigfoot should get the credit for really making it more part of our culture. I mean, I can't go anywhere without seeing a Bigfoot sticker on somebody's truck or something Bigfoot related, in a store, not just the jerky brand, but other stuff that's got, sodas that have Bigfoot on it and stuff. And I believe, Finding Bigfoot was kind of the catalyst for that.
Yeah, I understand it's a multi-billion-dollar industry today, right now. Some lady contacted me from the East Coast a year ago, and she was CEO of a corporation that takes the algorithms of these different topics from the internet, and they put them together like a Matt Drudge site, and they do this for commercial purposes. And we had a very, very nice discussion. To your book, you have in your book listed a number of different Indian tribes and stuff, and how they look at or how they perceived Bigfoot, Sasquatches. And I noticed in your book it kind of separated giants, at least the way I interpret it. It separates giants from Bigfoots. Is there, in your research, did you find any delineation between the two?
No, giants are Bigfoot. And so that is a breakdown of why I came up with that title, was how different tribes viewed their relationship with Bigfoot. So like the cover of the book are the hairy man pictographs or painted rock, which are a depiction of hairy man, hairy woman, and hairy baby that is on the Tule River Indian Reservation. And it is an important part of that tribe's belief systems. And so they have a creation story that basically hairy man, Bigfoot, created them, helped create them with other animals. And so the delineation is that there are tribes who believe them to be giants, brothers, but giants. Then you have tribes that don't have a good relationship with Bigfoot because he steals their children or steals their women for marriage partners. And those are the cannibals, because they eat the children. And then you have something worse. That's the monsters. Those are the ones that you don't want to have anything to do with. And the tribes just typically ended up killing them and getting rid of them because they were such a monster that they were harmful to the tribe. And so that's how come that title's like that. It's based on the relationship the tribe had with the Bigfoot.
That's very interesting that you say that. In the Great Lakes, I'm from Michigan, as you know. In the Great Lakes, there were three primary tribes at the time. They were Ojibwa, Ottawa, and the Potawatomi. That for reasons they claim were to fight and annihilate the prairie people. Have you ever come across the term prairie people before?
No, that's not a term I've heard before.
Yeah, the prairie people were supposed to be very, very big. And one the Indian chief from Ottawa said that they were so numerous in the Great Lakes area. And I'm talking about Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, that they were more populous than the leaves on a tree. And this has to go back to the 1700s. And all across the Great Lakes, including Ohio, there were the Indian Mountains. And these were some very, very big people, evidenced by the massive stature of these skeletons and stuff. But also combined with that was the iron that came from Michigan, up north Michigan. So the prairie people, so they set out to destroy and annihilate the prairie people because they were described almost to the T the way you describe the cannibals and the monsters. Exactly. And that's one thing that's always tweaked my interest with your book there.
There's a lot of tribes that believe that human children were a food source. And so it was often, I mean, across the entire United States. You can find them in the Pacific Northwest. You can find them in Texas. You can find those stories in Florida. And so it's a very widespread belief system. And so, but not all of them. Some Bigfoot were really useful. They were friends of the tribe. And, they were well known to be hunters, and they would bring the tribe deer meat in exchange for something that they needed from the tribe. And so I like to see what did the tribe think about the Bigfoot, and what can you tell me about a Bigfoot behavior that maybe we don't associate with Bigfoot, or we do associate Bigfoot with Bigfoot, like tree knocking. And then, what does that mean? If I hear a tree knock in the woods, what do the tribe say that means? Like whistling in particular is a very bad thing to hear at night in the forest. And you don't want to fall for it because it's a Bigfoot trying to lure you outside so that you can be kidnapped, essentially. And so, and I've heard that from a lot of different tribes. Just don't go outside if you hear that whistle at night. Don't fall for it, because you're going to get kidnapped if you do.
So is that frequently passed along presently? I mean, do people largely still feel that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I was because part of my job is I work with tribes on a regular basis, mostly just my local tribes. But when we have fires and stuff, and I work on those, and I work with those tribes. But I don't even remember now. Maybe 15 years ago, I was out at the reservation at night. We were doing some work on a project, and they were having problems with a Bigfoot on the reservation. And so they escorted me to my car, got me in, and they said, no matter what you do, don't stop until you get to the main road. And if something happens and you break down or whatever, I mean, it's not that long of a drive. I mean, it's not even a mile, I don't think. They said, stay in your car and don't leave your car if you hear a whistle. Just stay in your car. We'll find you eventually. And I always thought, well, what do you mean? And they said, well, if it's a Bigfoot trying to lure you out of your safety zone so that he can get you. And I was like, okay. And then, of course, luckily, I made it out just fine and stuff. But that was 15 years ago that I was told that. So it's still a common belief to tribal people. Of course, not a lot of the young folks, I think, don't necessarily believe that. I don't really know. I tend to only talk to elders when I talk to tribal members because I want the older knowledge, the traditional knowledge. But that I know just recently I talked to a young tribal member, and he just went, oh, poo, that's just what my elders believe. And so it's different for every generation, just like, your grandchildren and don't ever quite believe, like hard work will get you, a good life. And they're like, nah, I think playing this Game Boy for 10 hours a day is what will get me to where I need to go.
Yeah, I see a lot of striking parallels between what the elders say and what we see now presently in some of these reports. And what I do is, since I was a member of the Bigfoot forums, Kathy, what I do is I read and analyze hundreds of thousands of reports, and I put them together and break them down into data sets and data points. And I look at these reports, and I sort of took issue with something that somebody said, was quoted as saying, as far as Bigfoots and they're not dangerous, and blah 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 blah. Having the opportunity, from my vantage point, looking at these reports, that's a fallacy. That's not true. That's not correct, and it's not true. And what really burns me about that is that is the parroted narrative that's been going on for decades, in the Bigfoot community and stuff, and it's not accurate. The best information, I think, that we know about Bigfoots comes from the wise men, the Native Americans. Are you kidding me? There was no newspapers at one time, no televisions, no internets. This is where the knowledge came from. Thank God that these people had the wherewithal and the sense to pass this information along, really seriously.
Well, it's important that your children and your grandchildren survive. And so you're teaching them what's important in life. And I kind of always slightly take offense when I hear, not slightly, I do take offense when I hear people say, oh, they're just making that stuff up. And it's just like, well, wait a minute. This has been part of their culture for thousands of years. Mm-hmm. We have evidence of the history of the same story from hundreds of years ago. Why are they making it up? Well, because they talk about condor talking. Well, it's not literally condor talking. The condor is part of the story and conveying what it is that makes it more of an interesting story. But I always take advice from people who survived without electricity and without metal tools and all those comforts that we have. I think 99% of us wouldn't do so well alone in the woods and be able to find food on our own and navigate back to anything in particular. And so they're not making anything up. They're telling what they know. If you choose to believe it, then good. If you choose not to, that's fine. But there's no reason to make fun of it or mock it.
No, yeah, I agree 100%. The mockery and the ridicule, I can't deal with that. I can't tolerate it. Not even on my group site, I can't tolerate that.
No, it's just not mature, and it really is in a lot of ways. You're putting book knowledge ahead of everything else, when in the end, life skills, hunting skills, those are things we've lost, and we're going to be real sorry if we need them again. Because I tell you, we hire temps every year to help us in the archaeology program. I don't know how some of these kids made it to adulthood, let alone be able to do anything else in the society. And so it's just kind of like common sense is no longer common, because I don't know what we did with it. But
now, for a long time, you've been involved with the Texas Ape Conservatory. Is that correct?
Made me forget it now. North American Wood Ape Conservancy.
Yes.
WWAC.
Exactly.
They used to be the Texas, just Texas group, but we have a lot of members throughout the United States.
Yes. And I always held that particular group in high esteem.
Yes.
Because if you knew the people that commanded that group, such as yourself, your husband Bob, and others, and if I remember correctly, some of the leaders of the aforementioned Bigfoot Forum went into that group also. Is that correct?
It's possible. We do get members that are current Bigfoot Forum members, yes. But most of our members are, we have biologists, wildlife biologists. We have several anthropologists now. We have game wardens. We have, lots of experts, tracking experts. And so it's a well-rounded group and very professional, very scientific. We're not playing games. When we do our field work, it's not for pleasure. It is strictly business. And so I'm very proud to be associated with them.
No humor, no fake calls and game playing and stuff like that.
That's it. We've already had issues where, I won't say any names, but a gentleman who just totally fabricated something, and he was out of the group within half an hour. I mean, we just don't tolerate that stuff at all. And if you don't act professional, you're not in the group, because that's just the way it is. I mean, we don't have time for jokes and kids and stuff
for like nonsense.
That. Nope.
No, none whatsoever. So what is the most, there's a lot of stuff in your book. There's a lot of material. It covers a lot of different areas. What is the most interesting story or encounter that you happened upon that you would say was so interesting that it left an indelible impression on you that you placed it in that book? Is there anything that stands out in your mind, Kathy?
Well, my favorite is, of course, the creation stories about the rock art. That's just a stunning story about, I'm really into when you have a geologic feature and the tribe has a Bigfoot story associated with that feature as well. And so you can put it together. You can visually see what they were talking about, what they're describing in the story, and then the Bigfoot's part of that. And in particular, like on my national forest, we have a cave that the tribe discusses as being Bigfoot's cave. And they knew it was. His name is Yayali. And they knew that it was because there were bones in the cave. And so he was eating the people and throwing them down inside the cave. And it got so bad that they had to destroy him because he was just eating their people left and right. And so they ended up catching him on fire. And this is the story that they went to the top of the cave, set him on fire, and he fell. And as he's falling, he says, "Which way do you want me to fall?" And so he falls the direction they want him to fall. And those are called Bigfoot's bones. And it's marble type rocks that are sticking out of the ground. And so you can visually go see those bones, and I know where the cave is. And so, and even to this day, what I find fascinating, that cave, you have to rappel into it. There's no way for you to get into it, no way for you to see the bones in there unless you rappel. And they were correct. There are thousands of bones, but it's only 100 individuals that are found in that cave when we excavated it back in, I think, 1960s. Not me personally, but the University of Sacramento. And when we did the DNA and we did the age of it, the tribe kept telling me, "Those are not us. That's not us. We don't want those. That's not our people," because we wouldn't do that. And they were right that it was not them. It's some older group that was here. Maybe they got all eaten up. I don't know. But to put that all together, the compelling story that exists to go with that cave, with those rocks, with the fact that there was actually Native American bones in the cave itself. I mean, that's not random. They didn't make that up and happen, modern day, 1960s, they figured out that there were bones there, and then they made this story and somehow got it published in an anthropology book from 1885. I mean, come on. That's the kind of stuff that drives me crazy. Just because you don't believe it makes no difference. And tribes will tell you that. We don't really care if you believe our stories. They're not your stories anyway. Those stories belong to us. So it doesn't make any difference to us what you think about it. And I think that's the best way to put all that, I guess. So those stories are for those people who are open to or willing to understand what native knowledge is. And if you don't believe in native knowledge, then just go your own way, do your own thing.
Yeah. Now, are you planning on writing a second book along this line?
I do have, after I did just tons and tons of conferences, and I was getting bored with my own presentation. I started looking into, for me, logically, if this is a real animal, he should have followed how humans followed, how they went over the Bering Land Bridge through North America and then spread out down into South America. So there should be evidence that Bigfoot existed in South America too, unless it's just too hot or, all those little reasons that there were. So after I started looking into it, I found very similar stories. You have, instead of wild man of the woods, it's wild man of the jungle. They're very similar names in how they use that, and some awesome, incredible stories. And one of them being as old as, I think, from the 1600s, when Spain had a priest down there, and he recorded some of the stories, wrote them down as the tribe was telling them. And what's even more compelling is there's still tribes down there that haven't been contacted. And so what knowledge that they have would be just, so incredibly interesting. But, there is a language barrier for me. And so I have a little trouble reading all the stuff, but that would be if I ever get around to doing another book, that would be the subject, would be down in South American stories.
So again, back to your book, the petroglyphs that I see on the cover, which are fantastic.
They're pictographs.
Pictographs.
Yeah.
Me. So have you ever had the opportunity to look at the Burnt Hills in Fayette, Michigan, Delta County?
No.
Now, I found it interesting that when you were describing that cave, that they had to rappel down to that cave to get inside, where they found these skeletal remains. So, like, in similarity to that particular cave that you were speaking of, this particular cave, they call it Spider Cave. Of all names, they call it Spider Cave. It had pictographs on the walls that looked similar to the drawings that you have on your book. And they described this as a Spider-Man. But the interesting part of this is it also requires, now it's off limits. The state and the federal government stepped in and says, nobody's coming in here anymore. We're going to put a cage door on this, and nobody's coming in. But at one time, I understand that the Great Lakes were much higher. The lakes were much higher than they are now. And inside those caves, that particular cave, they found sharps. They found old ancient arrowheads, spear tips, all kinds of this sort of artifact inside that cave. And for that reason, the archaeologist from University of Michigan stepped in there, along with state and federal oversight people, and they put it off limits to the public to keep people from stealing and destroying the pictographs and stuff in there. But it is remarkable to me that we see similar images throughout history that have a very close likeness to those pictographs. We see it in the Momo monster. We see it in the Monroe monster in Michigan, 1965, that I'm talking about, in the 1960s with the Momo monster in Missouri. And this is well before the proliferation of computers and stuff and internet, as you know. So it's interesting to me that so many people from so many places across this great land had these same visual images, and had the skill to draw them so that we could see them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, Kathy, it's pretty tough. It's pretty hard to deny or call this or dismiss it as a myth, as it's been done over the decades and stuff. So my question to you is it possible that there are so many other caves like this, with the pictographs and the evidence, the physical evidence still inside these caves? Isn't there a cave in California where legend or is it California or Oklahoma where the grizzly, what is that place that the large man-eating cannibals
Lovelock Cave?
Yes.
Yeah, that's in Nevada.
Nevada, okay.
Yeah. We haven't. My national forest is several 100,000 acres of forest land, and we haven't surveyed every inch of our forest. So, I mean, I know that there's plenty of this stuff out there that hasn't been discovered yet. I mean, that's part of the fun, knowing that there could be something we haven't discovered yet, or else, I'd go ahead and just retire, So there's plenty of stuff out there and there's also plenty of stuff that we have found that we're misinterpreting. In the end, it would not surprise me if the Smithsonian doesn't have some Bigfoot bones in it, because they got so much stuff. I don't know how they've kept track of it, and so it wouldn't surprise me if somewhere, some museum, even a small museum somewhere in the United States, doesn't already have some bones that are being misidentified as human.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that's very likely that there's other stuff out there, we just haven't come across it yet.
Mm-hmm. So you approach this topic with a great deal of knowledge, and I wouldn't hazard to call you an expert. I don't know that you would appreciate that.
No.
But given your knowledge, Kathy, you've been involved with Bigfoot forums, the old Texas Bigfoot group before it became the primate
the North American Wooded Conservancy.
Yes.
NAWAC.
Yes. So, what is your opinion of Bigfoots, and is it okay to call them Bigfoots and Sasquatch?
I always just use Bigfoot. I don't put an S on the end of it. But what do I think of them, or the phenomena?
Well, the phenomenon.
Well, I'm a witness myself, and so I know that they're real. And so, and I certainly was astonished at their speed, and I used to make fun of that back in the day, and so I don't make fun of that stuff anymore. But I think we're making progress in the sense of proving that he's real. I mean, we have just new technologies all the time. Just the other day, my husband brought up that they're working on a study of collecting DNA from the air. So we already have environmental DNA, which is we get it from water, we can get it from the soil. But this is a new study that identified animals by just collecting the air in the environment, in the terrain that they were in. And they were very successful.
Really?
And so, yeah, I was just like, my whole face just went, and I mean, it's expensive. We still got to bring those prices down so that we can do more of them. But the very fact that we could do that is a game changer in my mind. It's the most magnificent thing I've heard in a very long time. And so the problem, of course, is always, what do we compare it to? It's easy to say I've got tiger DNA, I got lion DNA, because we have examples of those to pick from. But what if their DNA is so similar to ours that unless you sequence it with a lot of DNA, maybe it'll just come up human? Mm-hmm. And so that's the problem we always come back to, is we don't have anything to base it on. We don't have a type specimen to do some research on to see what is the full spectrum of their DNA. Who are they related to? Did they branch off of chimps? Did they branch off of orangutans? Where is that break? How long ago did that happen? Is he in the Homo line somewhere? We don't know. And until we get that body, until we get that sample that is undoubtedly Bigfoot, some of these new technologies won't help us now, but they'll help us later when we figure out that they're real and we have that DNA. That environmental DNA captures will tell us exactly what their range is, tell us hopefully how many of them are in that range without having to contact them or be the Jane Goodall, because I don't know that a Jane Goodall approach is ever really going to work, because they just, depending on the group, they just don't really care to be around us, and I don't really blame them either. So, but yeah, it's we got a lot of work to do, but we've come an awful long way.
Yeah, the idea that you can capture DNA from the air just absolutely floors me, because that technology in and of itself puts a whole different spin on law enforcement. And I used to spend a lot of time. Am I correct, Riz? I mean,
that is very, very new. And I'm surprised I haven't read that in some form or law enforcement form. So
I think my husband said something about it. I think he posted it on his Facebook page, but I'll ask him.
Because Charlestown just solved a murder case and rape case in Indiana off of eDNA. And we think it was touch DNA that they used.
Yeah, and that is true. I mean, oils on your fingers, we leave our fingerprints on everything in just oils, and there's DNA in our oils, DNA in our spit, there's DNA and everything. It's just capturing it and then having the ability to test it. And so as I recall, this was just one small lab that was experimenting with it, had great results, provable results that they can replicate. But it always also comes down to cost. These things are not cheap. They come down a long, long, long way. When I was talking about the DNA for the bones that were in the cave, that, I think I did that 20 years ago. I mean, I had to get a grant to pay for just a couple of DNA samples. And nowadays you can do a lot more, but they're still expensive to the common person, that you wouldn't have $1,000 just because you think you got a big pile of, Sasquatch dung or something to be able to test that. So, but you also don't have anything to compare it to.
I used mitochondrial DNA to locate a missing person who was actually a homicide person, victim, down in Houston, Texas. But mitochondrial, at the time this individual went missing, the DNA testing wasn't here in America. It's relatively new in the grander schemes of things, and I don't think it came to the United States before 1994, or something close to that.
Yeah.
And he went missing in 1980, and so he'd already been missing, fell off the radar 31 years, and that was a long shot. I did it. I was successful, and I'm a believer in that. And I got to tell you this. Sorry to interrupt, Kathy.
No, go ahead.
I got to tell you this: when they do autopsies, really, my hat's off to these people, these professionals that do the autopsies, because they know if the science isn't here now, next year or 2 years from now, the science may be there. So they take a sample portion of a victim, they catalog it, put it away, and who knows, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, the science may be there, and they can do whatever they need with that DNA sample.
Oh yeah, I mean, you have to think about the usefulness of it solving cases. Like we had, I can't think the name of him, highway killer or whatever, here in California. He was discovered because DNA from one of the cases matched DNA on one of those sites the different ones that they have for DNA, and they went backwards and found him that way. My husband found a sister he didn't even know about because of that. That you guys have a potential match. You guys might be brother and sister, or this person might be your cousin. And it was really funny that uh, my son had his DNA, and it matched my mom's DNA, and it sent my mom an email that said, "Hey, this person might be your grandson." And it was just really super funny because she laughed because he used a username she didn't recognize, and she goes, "I have an extra grandchild," and she was really excited until I told her, "No, that's this grandson you already know about." But that's the cat. It's amazing that those things are affordable. They're like $50 to take that test, and they give you the history, and they're still updating stuff. They change the more they find out, the more they change what percentage you are of those things. And just the fact that we have that already willingly given DNA database is useful in that sense. And I know we just come, I was talking to my husband about that, just how far we've come. When I was growing up, we had one television. It weighed a ton. It took up your entire living room. You had the phone on the wall with the long cord so you could walk around while you talked on the phone. And here we are, pocket computers that are in our hands and in my 8-year-old grandson's hand. And he can, if I do something wrong on my phone, I hand it to him and I say, "Fix it." And he fixes it like it's nothing. And so it's just how far we've already come with technology. I can't imagine in 10 years where we'll be. And so, and I saw somebody had a question about the DNA from the air. It would capture multiple species in the air because we have multiple species walking around and breathing, exhaling in an environment. But the DNA is so good, they can tell each animal apart. There's no, just because spit molecules hits another spit molecule, we can tell what those two animals are. So
that's fascinating.
Yeah.
That's really fascinating. I came upon a report, and it's been a while. I came across a report of a military soldier. I'm not talking about a retired soldier. I'm talking about an active military soldier who was actively, and I suppose that he was directed to do this, or this was at least part of his study, going out looking for stick structures and taking eDNA, looking for DNA, because it was the anonymous writer who suggested that they know some of those stick structures are used to bear children, give birth, and so the chances of capturing DNA is very, very high in those stick structures.
No. Well, they'd have DNA. Some of the stick structures I've seen are clearly just natural. They're not constructed. But I have seen ones that appear to be constructed, and DNA that is in the soil or on that you could get off of things that they touch would definitely tell us what's going on. And then birth, of course, would leave lots of DNA as the placenta and everything that goes with that. And so, I have not heard that story at all. I can see why the military would be interested in knowing if they've got a Bigfoot somewhere on their base or near their base or whatever they're doing. But that would be ideal. But again, I don't know how much a DNA test of that kind costs. I know the Forest Service uses it because we have can't remember if it's a frog or a toad, but whatever. We have animals, listed species that live in water, and we can get samples downstream and know if there's any in that water. So water carries DNA, soil carries DNA, and it now appears that we can capture DNA that of basically people breathing or animals breathing in the forest.
Wow, that's just mind-boggling to think about. It really is. So your understanding of Bigfoot's, Cannibals, Monsters, what do you think about the missing books that came out and proliferated The
Well, we've definitely heard stories of well, Native Americans would say, Bigfoot eats people. I mean, most of the I haven't read all of his books, of course, but Native Americans do have stories of Bigfoot's keeping a lost child safe until it could be returned, and I've heard modern stories of that as well. But being a Forest Service employee, I also know that people are often not prepared to be in the outdoors. It's stunning still how many people come up and they visit our lakes and recreate at our lakes, but they don't know how to swim. So why are you in a lake if you don't know how to swim? And we have people who come up that don't know that they're not supposed to leave an ice chest in their car because bears will rip their car open to get to the food that they can smell. I mean, the level of basic outdoor common sense is very lacking in a lot of people who live in a city. And so for me, it's not plausible that all of these are Bigfoot related. Although if you ever really listen to him, he never actually comes out and says it's Bigfoot. He just talks about they're missing and stuff. He hints at it, but he never actually says it is. But I also think that people get lost pretty darn easy in the forest. They can't find, they go off and, oh yeah, I'll know how to get to my car, but they don't have a compass. They've never actually done anything like that before. And it's easy to get turned around in a forest, I surely I could just turn around and walk back. And so it's those kinds of things I think are more likely. The most common reason people go missing is because nature got the best of them. That we've had a lot of hikers missing on our forest, and we end up always fighting Yosemite. Yosemite's the king of having missing people, but we eventually find them, and they're usually at the bottom of a falls or the bottom of a cliff, the bottom of something that they thought they could do and weren't successful at it. And so, but not discounting that a very, very small percentage might be due to a predator of some sort. Is that a Bigfoot? Is that a mountain lion? Is that a brown bear? Until you find the bodies or bones, or we will actually never know. So it's a lot of speculation and interesting, but it's just speculation.
Well, I agree, Kathy. I've written about this before. I've read at least 4 of those books. And at least 3 of them I must have read 2 and 3 and 4 times over again. One of the things that I'm critical about is the author. I feel the author has a duty to take a position when he writes a book, and as you said, leads people to believe this but doesn't say it. You have a duty. You have a duty to tell the reader that buys your product what your position is. Where do you stand in this? And to me, he fails to do this. And for that reason, I vow that I'm not buying another book. If I want to read a book, I'll go to the library and look at it or something, but I won't buy another book.
And I agree with that. And it was real interesting because I think in one of the movies that he did, the one movie, I guess, he highlighted a case that's right here on my national forest that we've had 3 people go missing from the same parking lot up we call it Donnell Vista, and broad daylight, person's gone, but their car's there and locked, and then we never find them. And so, and I one more chance, come on, tell us what you really think about this. And we got nothing out of it, and it's been disappointing in that sense because there's rumors galore going around, this county of what's really happened. Nobody wants to go there anymore unless you're in a packer group, a bunch of people. And
which is a wise thing anyway.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it is. But you should be able to get out of your car and use a restroom and get back in your car.
Yeah. Nobody's peeking.
Yeah.
Nobody's peeking. I went through the stake and pains of creating a list of what I believe attributes to missing persons. and I can't be 100% accurate. It's me and my experience, my personal experiences and stuff. And one of the things that I listed was top of the list: murder, homicide, foul play, voluntary missing. People want to go off the grid for whatever reason. Number two, predator, like you say, wild animal, whatever. Number three, their physical health, whatever condition they are. Some people don't think about that stuff before they get themselves in the woods and stuff.
Mhm.
And I might be missing a human trafficking, and of course, Bigfoot, Sasquatches. I mean, I'm not holding anything back when I say that, and I mean what I say. But I also indicate other unworldly beings. These things underground. Everybody knows they're there. Right now, currently, there's a war going on, subterranean war going on, and whatever's down there is coming up, and people see it. People put videos up on it. They show these things. They talk about these things. And these things, for the most part, are things that Hollywood wanted to tell us was just fiction, just enjoyment, entertainment, and stuff. But I'm a little more critical, a little more skeptical of that kind of stuff because, from the earliest days, Hollywood was run by overseers. And I'm talking about people standing over someone's shoulder telling them, don't put that in there, or yes, put that in there. So you have to wonder, where does Hollywood get their ideas, where their thoughts come from? It's from the experts. It's from reality. It's from real things that they know about. And so I put all that stuff together, and that's my thought on missing people. Now I'm going to tell you something about cars and automobiles, because that's always been fascinating to me. One of the things that I look at are confluences and connections, and I look for patterns. And when I see these reports, especially when someone comes up missing, I like to, again, I refer back to my previous work, my Facebook group site. I document a lot of stuff, but I talked about how, at one point I talked about how when I was in the military, and I served 2 tours in the military. One of them was combat infantry. Second one was military police investigator. But in any event, map reading in navigation, land navigation, was very, very important. Very critical. Very, very critical. And for a young kid like myself, for the first time looking at a topological map, it's alien to me. I've never seen anything like this. But to take a compass, as you say, lay it on that map and orient it to north, south, east, and west, and try and learn to triangulate three unknown points to figure out where you're at. That's the mastery of learning the compass. The compass is a very, very important instrument. But the point that I'm getting at is there's a report out of Canada where, and I think I've said this before, there was a rest area off the highway, much like we see in the interstate freeways, and there was a car blocking the ingress coming off the freeway into this rest area. Lights on, door open, nobody around. Truck driver came out of the bathroom, seen a young mother and the baby and the child, sat down and started talking to the lady and says, "Hey, what's the deal with that car there blocking the entrance?" "Well, I don't know," they said. They said that these 2 witnesses claim they looked across, something got their attention. They looked across the double lanes. They seen a Sasquatch figure looked like it was carrying a man with shoes on. They could see shoes, they could see legs and pants, carrying a man up a hill. And they both got in their vehicles. They didn't say anything about calling police or anything. They just wanted to leave out of there and get out of there and leave. I see this quite a bit in the missing people, where in even if it's not missing people, it's just reports where Sasquatch is a mechanical master at unlocking doors. I mean, we don't think about that, but one man was saying that, I got out of the car. I went out to the car. The car door was locked. I went out to the car to get some diapers and come back in the house. I turn around. There's a Sasquatch standing behind me, and he got into my car. He opened up my locked door and got in my car. Another one says my doors are locked on my house, and that thing was able to defeat the locking mechanism. One of the things that I did in the police department was crime prevention. And I know they sent me up to Detroit Police to learn crime prevention skills and stuff. And some of those topic areas that we learned were locking mechanisms. Really, it's a skill to learn this stuff. I'm not mechanically inclined like that, but to understand that there's a device, an instrument that it's so intricate that you really have to study that stuff to understand and know how to defeat those things. And to think that a being like a Sasquatch can defeat the mechanisms, some of these mechanisms, is just, we just don't know, Kathy. We just don't know.
That doesn't make me very happy to hear that.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. It's just unbelievable. It's unbelievable. So, what are some of the native groups that you spoke to where you collected this information and you researched? Is there a variety of them? I think your book listed 45 or something.
Yeah, about 45 tribes or so. Oh, there's more than that. I can't. I'll have to think. I can't think of it at this moment. But I think the most useful thing is in the back is an appendix of all the tribal names for Bigfoot that I could find, and then what the meaning of the word is, and based on like the Miwok who live in this county have all kinds of names for Bigfoot, and in particular, if they were a bad Bigfoot, they had a name for him. And so Yayali's a good Bigfoot. He's your friendly, he's not going to hurt you kind of Bigfoot. But they have another name for a Bigfoot that is, as they call a jerk. The jerk Bigfoot has a name. And so, but it's for all the ones that I could find in North America. So I think that's very valuable and heavily researched. I did a lot of work on that.
So what I want to know is how do you determine good from bad? If you look at one, how do you tell? Is there,
well, I had something very interesting happen to me like a couple years ago. One of the tribes I work with is the Washoe. And just randomly, one of the guys that I work with from that tribe called me up, and he said, I just want to let you know that you've got 3 Bigfoots on your side of the mountain, because I'm in the Sierra Nevada mountains, and told me a couple of things. And he said, and the one that's in Calaveras County is, and he used an expletive of, he's bad. He's a very bad Bigfoot. And then he just hung up. And I thought, well, first of all, I didn't even write it down because it happened so fast and unexpected that I didn't write down any of the names, for it, because it caught me off guard. And the funny part, not funny, but the tribe in Calaveras always talks about this bad Bigfoot that they have in their county, and that he causes trouble, and he's the one that's going to take all your apples off your apple tree. He's the one that's going to mess with stuff and do bad things. And so I just happened to think that was funny because it's 2 different tribes telling me the same thing about a Bigfoot in Calaveras County. And interesting enough, we don't get a lot of Bigfoot sightings out of Calaveras County, and it's really a rugged rugged terrain in there. And so I think that's probably what's going on, is that the nice flat ground's already occupied by us humans. And so they're sticking to the canyons and the rough ground that we don't typically hang around in, because it's just, I mean, it's steep ground.
Mhm.
So I don't know how you tell the difference. I guess it's your first encounter will tell you one way or the other, right? I guess you're going to walk away from it or you're not.
Did you ever notice that a lot of people will say that Bigfoots just want to be left alone?
Oh,
and
yeah.
yet they spend an awful lot of time getting in your business, peeping in your window.
Yeah, I think those tend to be the younger ones.
Mhm.
I think we're very interesting to the young ones and not so much to the older ones, because they know
Mhm.
what we are. And unless, we have something they need or want, I don't think they want anything to do with us. But I think to the younger, and I can't define younger for you,
Mhm.
I think we're entertaining.
Mhm.
I think we're interesting to watch, and we have some interesting things. And I mean, I know that if I was, it would depend on how much I view you as a threat. If I know that I'm bigger than you, even as a small one, stronger than you, because
Mhm.
they're just nothing but muscle, I think I would be inclined to maybe try to peek in your window and see what are you doing in that funny looking box that can't get any air and really looks pretty miserable to somebody who has the entire forest to themselves. So, they also don't think they're going to get caught.
Mhm.
I think that they see a lot better at night than we do. And I think that's an advantage for them. And I think they know that's an advantage for them. And so I think that they're willing, younger ones anyway, willing to do a little bit more with the belief that they're not going to be caught doing it.
Mhm. You know what, Kathy, I tend to agree with that. And there's reports out of Michigan. Again, I'm from Michigan, so I look at this a little harder, a little closer. But it seems like a lot of the angst and a lot of the annoyance comes from what we would consider juveniles, the 7-footers that aren't quite adults yet. They're still finding their way, and they act a lot like what we would consider delinquents,
Mm-hmm.
and especially if they don't have any elder alphas around them to guide them and to show them, you don't pastor these people. We
Yeah.
don't want to have to pick up and move here. Don't bother them.
And we don't know, because we don't know what their family structure is. We don't
Mhm.
know that it's one dominant male that has a harem of females, and all the young ones live with them until the males become unruly and they got to kick them out because
Mhm.
they got to go find a new mate. We don't know.
Mhm.
We don't know what that living structure is. But it wouldn't. I mean, I wouldn't think it'd be too far off of other primates that have the male doesn't necessarily stick around all the time. He's off doing his own thing until such time as he needs to come back and recognize. Somebody's commenting about my do. I can't do that.
Yeah. They're very observant. Can you tell?
Yes, I know. Geez. But but we don't know. But yeah, I tend to think that it's the ones that haven't. They're tall, they're big, but their brain isn't the same age as their
It's not.
body appears.
Yeah, it's not developed and it's not mature.
Yeah.
The report, one of the reports that stays in my mind when I talk about this, is a case where a homeowner has had numerous reports of Bigfoot encounters and stuff, and one of them in particular liked to wait till 3 o'clock in the morning to scream.
Oh,
and
nice.
tear up the trees and then throw them in his manicured lawn. One night he says, I work late, I come home late. I just want to go outside to have a cigar and just chill before I go to bed. One night he says, I got up, I turned the floodlights on, and I screamed. I picked up the tree, thrown on my lawn, threw it back in the woods, and I screamed. He says, I screamed so everybody can hear me around here. And he says, I told that thing out there, if you don't stop, those lights are going to stay on all night, and they're going to come on every night until you stop acting like this. He says, Lance told me that when he screamed and yelled like that, he said he heard this huge, massive guttural roar. Like he says, he got the impression it was an alpha male telling this youngster, shut your mouth and go to bed or whatever you do, but leave that man alone. He says, Val, everything was quiet after that. Everything. I never had another problem with it. Not after that. So I have to believe that and I've been told this before, that Bigfoot Sasquatches are some of them are residents, some of them stay in an area they're very, very comfortable, like the idyllic creatures of habit. A lot of them will come back and return to places they've been that they're familiar with, which may explain why some of these have shown up in inner cities, because, decades ago, a lot of these suburbs weren't there. It was undeveloped land. So in a case where these things have been inhabiting an area, they might be residents, and they've learned to coexist and get along and stay out of sight and not be a nuisance. Therefore, the residents are fully aware of their presence, but they don't bother each other. It's live and let live, and they don't want to have to pack up and leave. They're safe there. They raise their young there, and if a juvenile comes along, a delinquent comes along, and decides he's going to become a nuisance, that's bad for everybody.
Yeah.
And not only that, Kathy, I see this time and time again in those missing books. When somebody goes missing, and in a lot of those books, again, I'm looking for confluence, I'm looking for connections, I'm looking for patterns. A lot of those books, I've noticed that, not all of them, but a lot of them recount these incidents where these people go missing, and it depended upon the response that people show, human beings, people show in looking for this person. And a lot of times it determines whether or not that individual is going to come. I don't know where I've been. All of a sudden I'm here. The little boy is here. The little girl's there. A lot of times this happens over and over again. And so for that reason, I think a lot of this has to do with that. If there's a clan, a responsible member of the clan that says, hey, look, it's not good for us. When you take that person, it's not good for us, because it brings all that heat in on us, and we have to move. We can't stay here like this. So you're going to stop. Go take that child back over there and leave him where he could be found. So this happens a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And David Pallades doesn't pay me any money to figure these things out, but I'm just telling you that I, read and analyze and studying this stuff. This is what I see, and it happens all the time. So what do you think about that, Kathy?
Well, I definitely have heard of stories. There are Native American stories of baby or child Bigfoots playing with human children and getting along just fine. And the Bigfoot mom would come and get the kid and say, no, don't do that kind of thing, because you don't want to be interacting with humans. And I had a Native woman tell me when she was younger, her mom told her specifically, don't go with those people over there. You see those Bigfoot, because they're not like us. They may look like us, but they're not us. They don't have the same songs or the same dances that we have. So don't be tempted, but they're going to want you to come with them, but don't go. And so if that's Native people if they believe that that can happen, then I'm very open to that. That's something that at least occurred in the past. I don't know, can't tell you if it's still occurring or not. I mean, I don't personally know, but I know that there was a young boy that went missing in Arkansas a couple years ago, and he said that a bear kept him warm.
Mm-hmm.
We know darn well no bear's going to do that.
No,
So
no. Was that Arkansas or North Carolina?
I don't. It's somewhere.
Yeah,
back there.
yeah. I remember something like that, and again, one of the things that I've noticed is that law enforcement, in particular, has used the term bear in place of Bigfoot, Sasquatch a lot, and rightly so, because you know as well as a lot of us know that people from the earliest time used to refer to them, including the native Indians, used to refer to them as bear people. You know, it's bear. So now it just so happens that it's a coincidence, and it's useful. It's a useful term.
Well, so, I mean, I've never heard of the term bear people before, but but I do know that a bear is not going to take a child and keep it warm for the night. It's just not going to happen. So.
No. There's 2 reports out of Oklahoma where a Native American lady living on a reservation experienced a Sasquatch trying to steal her child out of the tent. She caught him, and she took it upon herself to talk to another lady, unrelated, and advise her, warn her, keep an eye on your baby, because I was at this area here, and this is what happened to me. And sure enough, the second report out of Oklahoma, the mother says that at night, she says, I seen an arm reaching into the tent, and it was trying to pull that sleeping bag with my baby in it out of the tent. Yes. And now the second report says that it's been told to her, as she repeats the story. She claims that it's been told to her by native Indians that Sasquatch do this when their baby dies, and they look for a way to replace that baby.
Yes. And I've heard that many times. In fact, that's one of the tools we used to use but don't use it anymore, was a crying baby tape, where it just cries and cries and cries and cries to try to see if that would lure anybody in. It never worked for anything, but yeah, I've heard that many times, that it's a replacement baby because they lost theirs, and that wasn't for food, that was for raising it as their own.
Yes. And so does that explain why we see reports of blonde-haired, blue-eyed Sasquatches today?
No, I think that's just a natural diversity in a population. I think human population, we're all Homo sapiens sapien, that's our species. And yet we are very diverse in our skin color, our hair color, our eye color, facial features. And I think that's just what you see in a breeding group. I do not believe it would be possible for a Sasquatch to mate with a human and it have a viable offspring. We're just not closely enough related to each other to be able to accomplish that.
Kathy, have you ever heard of the Miller documents?
No.
Never heard it. That's been out a couple years. Supposedly, I'm paraphrasing a lot of this because I don't have the document in front of me. But supposedly, this mysterious figure, H.A. Miller, Dr. M.D., Ph.D., trained at one of the Ivy League schools, Yale, I think, in particular, gets involved with one of these government agencies, and he's recruited by forestry or agricultural or something. But in any event, he's made a name for himself over the years in studying primates. And this document the way I interpret it, the way I see it, was it was a like a confession, you know, to be found and read by his progeny after, you know, upon death and stuff. I don't think it was something that was supposed to be found and read and placed all over the place, you know, while he was alive and stuff. But in any event, he claims that his first encounter with a Sasquatch Bigfoot was down in Texas, and during the mid '60s, during the mid to early '60s, there was a rampaging Bigfoot that killed a number of people, and it seems to me that I remember Lauren Coleman writing about this, and he mentioned that in one of his books. And there was another article, like a follow-up that I read, a report, and I think it was even mentioned in the Miller document that two soldiers in California were talking amongst themselves. Somebody heard it, and what they were talking about was the same thing that I'm just talking about that happened in Texas. And this mysterious man, by the way, you couldn't look him up. You couldn't look him up because he doesn't exist. He doesn't exist on paper. He doesn't exist in a yearbook, which to me, all these little telltale signs and stuff tell me that you're not supposed to know who he is. You know, he was incognito, likely because of the work that he was doing. And in any event, the next occasion that he has to work with Sasquatches was up in the Pacific Northwest. I think it was California. In this case, he mentions in that paper, in that document, that there was a violent Columbus Day storm where lightning struck a tree, fell and killed a Sasquatch. And so he was sent up there to examine this specimen, and he gave a name to it that I wouldn't recognize, and I'm not even going to attempt to try to call it what he called it. But in any event, in both times, in both terms, whether it was in Texas or the Pacific Northwest, the Pacific Sasquatch, he gave the term Celebidae norteños, and then in the Pacific Northwest, it was the Celebidae Pacific Northwest, which he delineated the two different areas and stuff. But he also made the case where they were similar in stature and physique. And so he goes on to talk about, in this document, he goes on to talk about how in this particular year, the government was supposed to designate vast new areas off limits to public, and that it was supposed to be used for wildlife or whatever. And the last paragraph in this document, as a caveat, he says this. He says, the Celebidae, the Bigfoot Sasquatches, are very, very loyal to their own. And they have a voracious appetite. And if something happens to the resources, deer, elk, whatever, they won't coexist with human beings. They can never coexist with human beings because they're very opportunistic, and they're very voracious when it comes to food, and it comes to resources and their own kind. That's basically what.
Yeah, that's not something I would believe to be true, because if that was true, we'd still be seeing that, and we don't have populations of deer or elk being wiped out. And so I think that's probably a fictional document that was written to have that effect, but we just don't see that. In the Forest Service, I work with wildlife biology, I work with aquatics, I work with all kinds of different resources, and we'd see something like that because we know there's Bigfoot in this county. And plus, the Native Americans have never said that about Bigfoot, that he's ferocious and eats everything in sight. You know, that's more of a monster type, legendary status kind of thing. So I don't put any stock in that.
Do you have anything, Chris?
Yeah, so Old Bear wants to know, how does he get in touch with you? He'd like to carry on more conversations and hear more thoughts and your beliefs on Bigfoot. He's a big follower, and he has a lot of experience with Bigfoot, and I can tell you that much. Yes.
Yeah, I'm on Facebook. That's the quickest way, because the NAWAC, I mean, they can get messages, but our forum is internal for us. And so that's just the easiest way, is Facebook.
So what are some of the kinder, gentler stories that you came upon that you placed in your book, Kathy?
Oh, there's quite a few. I mean, like I said, for the Tule River, who have the pictograph, he's creator of them. Help create them with the other animals, and he's so important to them that when an elder dies, he has to come to take the elder to the other side. And it's really interesting that I've had several times now interviewed a Native American on the reservation who's had a Bigfoot sighting the day of an elder funeral. And so it's just a little interesting for me. But there's you know, there's always a mix of everything. In a real population, you're going to expect different behaviors from that population. You're going to have the hoodlums, you're going to have the troublemakers, you're going to have the mean bully kind of person or Bigfoot, and you're going to have a kind Bigfoot. I mean, that's just the way a real living population works. And so that's what I see in the diversity of the stories as well. And so for me, that's a clue that these are real stories, because it shows what you would expect a living population to have.
So what is the greatest number of multiple Sasquatches in a group that you've came upon in your studies and experience?
When I had my sighting, there was 2 of them. And it seems like, I think I've heard of 3 at a time before, but not much bigger than that. I think there was 4 in the famous one up in Mount St. Helens, where the Bigfoot was digging in the ground and flipping rocks over looking for bugs. And I think there was 2 big ones and 2 little ones in that one. But there's rarely, you know, great amounts of them in one place at one time.
That you found.
That I have found, yes.
Yeah. The database that I keep, it's quite extraordinary, because that's one of the data points that I look for. Multiple, I classify them as multiple animals, but the majority of them are pairs, 2 and 3, and then it graduates up to 10, 15.
Wow.
There's a report out of Pacific Northwest where a father and son moving to, I want to say, I don't have the report in front of me, it's been a long time, but it seems to me that they were, and I drove the Cascade Mountains before in the wintertime. Oh, that's treacherous, dark and treacherous. So there they are driving, I want to say to Wyoming. They're going to move there or something, and they happen to see a pull off, and it seems to me that there was a group of 10 of them, and it made them, they appeared aggressive to them, and it, you know, they really wanted to stop and rest a little bit, go to the bathroom, but they had to pull away from that area quick because they appeared aggressive, and there was a lot of them in that particular group. There's another case out of I want to say the Pacific Northwest, where the man claims that there was a group of 15 or 20 of them and this camera keeps going off. We'll turn it back on. And he says that it was like a meeting or something, and the large gray Bigfoot was carrying what looked like a large piece of lumber, like a staff. So he deduced that that was the leader of this group and stuff. But there were a lot of them together. In my particular experience, and the only encounter I've ever had, again in Michigan, there were two of these beings in trees. One in particular that I took a snapshot of, and I placed that on the Bigfoot forums years ago. And somebody got a hold of this photo in the UK and sent it back to me with circles around, with the picture magnified, with circles around at least 4 other individuals on the ground, in crouching positions and laying on the ground watching us. But I want to say that was a harrowing experience, one that I've never encountered before like that, and certainly something I wanted to get away from. I knew I was armed. I was certainly armed, and I'm certain that the thing seen my weapon, but it never made any hostile gestures or showed any outward signs of aggression. But I know that I wasn't wanted there. We weren't, myself and my partner, we weren't wanted there. That we had to leave, and I wanted to leave. And that's my only experience, and I'm glad that we didn't encounter any aggression out of that group. But there were 6. There was a blonde-haired being up in a tree next to the one that I seen that I took a picture of, and it was completely blonde-haired, and the one that I seen was red-haired, and the face had very, very little facial hair on it, but the thing was so tall. It's impossible for a human being to wear a ghillie suit and have all that hair on, in the middle of Michigan summer, plus humidity and stuff. It's just very interesting. But I'll tell you something. One thing that I noticed about Sasquatch sightings, Kathy, I don't know if you ever came across this, is that when people happen into Bigfoot Sasquatches like this, there seems to be hordes and hordes of flies and insects, mosquitoes, that seem to always follow these things, like bears, like stinking bears. People can smell bear from a long distance because of the odor. But it seemed like other people have reported this too, just hordes of insects. It was crazy, ridiculous.
Yeah, I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
I've never had anybody mention that. So, and I've seen plenty of bear that certainly didn't have any smell or flies or anything with them. I think it may be that individual. Some animals are cleaner than others, just like some humans are cleaner than others.
For a lot of people, they consider measuring a Bigfoot researcher by the dirt underneath their fingernails.
Yeah, dirt underneath your fingernails.
No, I don't. Yeah.
You're doing something weird.
Yeah. This person's a good Bigfoot researcher. Why? Well, look at his fingernails. They're all caked with gunk and stuff. No, I don't think so. Sorry, I don't buy that.
No.
But yeah, I really appreciate you coming on, and it's been a long, long time since I talked to Hairy Man.
I know.
I didn't even know.
There's a quick question for you, if you don't mind. Just just to touch on it,
Sure.
what's your thoughts about the gnome study, about the results of the DNA?
The gnome or the genome?
Genome,
Okay.
sorry.
I was gonna say, if we're going to start talking about gnomes, it's time for me to go.
Yeah, we do talk about gnomes on other shows.
Not for me. The one Melba Ketchum, is that?
Yes.
Um, the first study had so many flaws, scientific flaws in them, that I don't have any faith in the results at all. It was very poorly done scientifically. She's working on Dogman, I think now, but I have still yet to figure out what the difference between a Dogman and a Bigfoot is. But we don't need to go into that. But I'm a scientist by trade, and I can read a study and see what the science is, and that science was flawed. And so, if you have flawed data going in, you're going to have flawed data coming out. And so, that's about what I can say about that.
Right, that makes sense to me.
Kathy, is there room in the Bigfoot world for citizen scientists?
Oh, of course. Of course. You just make sure what you do is scientific in the sense of, if you take a picture of a footprint, make sure there's a ruler next to it. Keep a journal where you write down days and times of what you experienced, because you think your memory is good, but it's really not as good as you think it is. So write it down. You don't have to, doesn't have to be a novel. It just has to be 1201 rock thrown, 1202 heard a howl, that kind of stuff, so that you can keep track of what's going on. And for those people who believe that they're finding structures, do a little more research. Was there a Boy Scout camp Jubilee that weekend or 2 weekends before? Put a marker on it so you've seen this one already. So for a while we had a Bigfoot that was breaking trees, doing the twists and pulling him down. And I marked it every time I found one. I marked it with one of my markers so that I knew I already saw this one, that this isn't a brand new one. This is this one that I saw on this day. And I'd write it down. And as an archaeologist, I just made maps, because that's what I do. I use, GPS. Things like that. Just, be thoughtful. If you think you have a Bigfoot hair, don't lick it. I don't know why you would, but use gloves to pick it out, and don't put it in plastic. Put it in a paper envelope. Plastic eats DNA. And so just those types of things. So I think anybody can be a scientist, a citizen scientist. You just, use some basic common rules. Have a camera, have a ruler, a measuring tape, those basics that you need to keep with you when you're out purposefully Bigfooting. If you're just going on a family stroll, be a family first.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, those are some good points. When you're talking about collecting evidence and stuff, the plastic sweats.
Yeah.
And it causes moisture and stuff. So you want the stuff to air dry if it's needed be. But getting back to tree twists, what do you believe the motive, the cause of tree twists are?
I think they're territorial, that one male is in an area and he thinks another male's in the area, and he's pulling down the tree to indicate his strength and his height. Mm-hmm. And we actually almost caught a Bigfoot doing it. We had just been past this area and we started back, and there were no tree breaks, and this one tree just had it happen. Broad daylight, no weather whatsoever, and it was still doing that bounce where it's trying to straighten itself up. Mm-hmm. And so, and where it was bent, it was clear that whoever was doing it wasn't as tall, as that they had reached up and pulled it down to their area, twisted it, and then was letting it bounce back up. So,
wow,
that's very interesting. They what? They cheat.
They cheat. I'm 8 foot tall. No, you're not. You're 5'2", dude. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna look like I'm 8 foot tall.
Mm-hmm. So inverted trees. Have you ever seen any inverted trees?
No.
None at all.
No.
So it wouldn't be fair to ask. What about X's in
Well,
stick formations.
yeah, I've never seen anything that I thought was placed by anybody. I've seen them natural from wind.
Mhm.
You know, dead things die and they fall in strange patterns naturally.
Mhm.
So,
There we go again. Gremlin,
yeah.
a gremlin. So, so you're saying a lot of stick formations and stuff are manipulated, man-made.
No, I think a lot of I don't. Well, I have seen. I guess a stick structure is the best I could put it. Was a nest, and I know it was made by somebody because the end of the tree was being held down by a rock that came from a location because I could find the location where the rock came from. Who
Mhm.
made it? I don't know. The inside was padded with moss and ferns, but I excavated the entire thing and I didn't even get a hair out of it. I got nothing. So I don't know if I interrupted who was going to use it, if it was just bored kids that made it. I mean, I don't know. So the Native Americans don't talk about Bigfoot's making structures like that, but maybe they never witnessed it or it wasn't important to pass on. I don't know. So I think a lot of things that people call X's or stuff like that is likely natural.
Mhm. So have you heard of a lot of forestry people commenting or making reports of Sasquatch encounters?
Yeah, when the tree breaks were happening around here, I took our forestry people out there to tell me what it was, and they had no explanation. They said that it could not have been created by weather.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then they stopped. So
no natural cause.
No natural cause whatsoever for them.
Mm-hmm.
That it had to be done by essentially they thought it was human, but they couldn't figure out why or how a human would do it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. What about tree ornaments? And what I mean by tree ornaments are animals and rocks and other crazy things. Purportedly,
do they put rocks in trees?
Different items, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Animate and inanimate objects. Why would they do that other than to look at?
Well, I actually had that happen when I was in the field with a tribe, and the tribal around these parts, you just leave your keys on your windshield. So
Mhm.
somebody's going to take your car, just unlock it and get what you want, but don't smash my windows.
Mm-hmm.
And we walked around a meadow. We were never really all that far from the cars, but had our backs turned and stuff like that. And when we got back to the car, one of the elders' keys were missing. And so we looked around and looked around and looked around, and we finally found them in the nook of the tree that was right in front of his car.
Mm-hmm.
And he was really mad. He said, "Damn you, Yayali," and he blamed it on Bigfoot. And that he said that's what they like to do. It's a form of teasing, I guess. And so he was mad about it, but all the rest of us were kind of like, well, God didn't happen to us because we didn't want to have anything to do with that. So anyway, but they just said it was, just a prank or, a tease, something that was meant to be playful, not vindictive.
Now, somewhere in the database, and incidentally, I created 4 databases. One Michigan, the second one is a U.S. North America database. The third one is more or less a reference book with different adaptations of the more interesting topics and stuff. And one of them is items found in trees. And I noted in a thread that I wrote, tree ornaments. A lot of these things are placed in places where they can be seen, and as a boastful thing. This is what I do. This is what I can do. If you want some, right here's my business card. Look me up. I've got reports of bulls in trees, horses in trees, Uh,
Oh, wait a minute.
55
Horse?
horse.
An entire horse?
Yes. Yes.
Alive?
No, they're dead. Broken
Oh.
back, broken necks, broken backs.
Wow.
Dogs, people, tents, bicycles, tires. You know, if you take a full tire, fully inflated tire, and this is something I learned on the job, and this is something that I was trained to do in law enforcement as a matter of exigent circumstances for water safety. Something I didn't know before I went into this, but you take a full-size car, fully inflated tire, and try to lift it up. I mean, I'm not a skinny guy, but I have difficulty lifting that thing straight out in front of me. But that tire can hold a float. It can hold up to 15 men, full-grown men in the water, and keep them buoyant.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the instruments that they use in a case where a car is submerged or something. But the point I'm making is that you see some of these tires up in that tree. You see clothes up in trees, people looking for their shoes, backpacks, missing backpacks and stuff. They find them up there in the trees. Animals, headless animals, all of these interesting little tidbits and stuff. So from what I see, whether they're animate or inanimate objects, they're posted there most of the time to see. I mean, if I do a good job, and I want to brag about it, I want to put it out there for people to see. Or if I don't want people in my area, I'm going to put this stuff up on a tree. This is what I can do. Show me what you can do.
I think that's more of a, not for humans, but maybe for other Bigfoots to see.
I think, yes, I
That's
agree.
an internal communication method, not for us, because I don't think they do anything in particular for us, you know. But that's, I think, saying to another Bigfoot, and it's probably two dominant males, and that because they're not, or it's also possible it's for a female and they're trying to impress. I mean, we don't know.
Well, I'll tell you what, if I see stuff like that up in a tree, it impress me.
And a horse in a tree would impress me, yes.
Yes, and a lot of these troll people will come on there and see that stuff, and they'll put up their big cats do this. Well, I'm gonna tell you something. I've never seen a big cat pick up a boulder and put it in the fork of a tree. Never.
Yeah, no, they can't.
And I don't think it's going to happen.
No.
But the fact that that you got a horse with a broken back up in a tree, something happened to that horse.
Well,
Something
in a
broke in
horse,
that horse's back.
even a regularly sized cats don't typically attack horses. That's not the size of prey they're looking for.
No.
So for that one, that's either human caused or it's Bigfoot caused. There's only two options. It's very unusual.
I like the way you deduce things, Kathy, reasonably.
Well, I have a lot of experience with animals in the woods because I've been an archaeologist in the woods for 35 years. And so you see all kinds of crazy stuff, and you see a lot of stuff that scares you, but you know, I know what certain animals are capable of doing. They're not going to take on a horse because you'll get stomped, you know, and so they're not stupid animals. And so you take what you think you can take on, not something that's going to get you killed in reverse.
How do you think Bigfoots and bears coexist?
I think they coexist just fine apart from each other. I know I've heard of grizzly and Bigfoot fights before. I don't think I've ever heard of a black bear that we have here in California battle before, but I think a smart bear would just stay away because I don't think they can win that battle. They may have teeth and claws, but Bigfoot's got might.
Yeah, it seems like there was a report or two that I've seen where a elder, Native American again, elder, says that these reports, when you see Bigfoot, Sasquatch, carrying lumber, big lumber. It's usually in areas where grizzly are around, and this is how they deal with the grizzly. They bludgeon them with these logs, that they carry and stuff
from a distance.
Yeah, and there have been reports of Bigfoot and bear tangling, and the bear come out on the wrong side of the fight.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of reports that Bigfoots have developed a taste for bear meat because, and a lot of people believe that the reason why they've developed this taste for bear meat is because bear are the natural predator of their young, that are often left in trees and stuff, and the bears will eat them. And so Bigfoot's being vengeful that they are, and very loyal and very protective of their own. They go out and track these bears down, and they'll kill them and eat them. Everybody enjoys the festival, the bounty of the festival. So it's the whole study, Kathy, is very, very interesting, and it's beyond me that anybody can think that anybody is an expert in this, because once you think that you know it all and you've seen it all and you read it all, there's something else that pops up. It's just as fantastical, amazing and stuff. It's just unbelievable. The topic is wide open.
It is. It truly is.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's been really great having you in here tonight.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, thank you for having me.
And do you want to?
Thank you for being on.
You want to plug your book?
Yes, absolutely, please.
Sure, it's Giants, Cannibals, and Monsters, Bigfoot and Native Culture, and you can find it at Hancock House, who's my publisher. They're, like I said, the first edition sold out, and you may be able to find some of those on eBay, or you can find it on Amazon as well. And it's a beautiful book. It truly is. And
I got to say, Hancock is not a pushover publisher either. It's one of the best. It's one of the preeminent publishers out there today.
Yes.
So yeah, it's a remarkable book, and when you open up that book, you know that some time and thought has gone into those pages. It's just a beautiful book, and I'm so glad, Kathy. I'm so glad to be able to talk to you again, see you again. It's been a long time.
Yes, it has.
So you tell the audience here what Gumshoe Guy was like when he was on the Bigfoot forum. Was I a pest? Was I a pest?
No, you were very nice, very nice and intelligent.
So yeah, it was a good group. I appreciated that. It was actually a springboard to get me into this, because I didn't want to get into Facebook. I prefer to just stand back in the shadows and just read and lurk and stuff. But I met a lot of good people on the Bigfoot forums and stuff. And I'm every once in a while on Facebook, I'll see a name that I'm familiar with from the past, and it was just an honor and a great thing to be able to chit chat with you once again. And
thank you for having me.
Yes.
You guys have a good evening.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank
you too.
Kathy.
Take care. Bye. Wow, what a show once again.
I love it. It was a good show.
Yeah.
I mean, really,
interesting.
Really, Gris, wasn't Kathy a super person to chit chat with?
Yes, absolutely.
And she's got so much knowledge. Her and her husband have been involved in Bigfootery for a long time. And I'm going to tell you something. Their name is well known in Bigfootery. A lot of people know those two. A lot of people. Good people.
So now I know what the whistle means. See, people didn't know, and everybody tells me do not go in the woods alone, and I don't anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go out there and whistle.
Now I'm good.
And yell.
Now
go out there and whistle and make a yell.
No, not at all.
I'm over here. You want some? Come over here. No,
Yeah.
I'm not doing that stuff. Are you kidding me?
Right.
I'm not. This homie doesn't play that stuff. I don't do that. I'm not going to do that.
No, absolutely not. So,
Mhm.
no.
And you heard it right from her mouth. That's what the deal is.
Yeah,
So-
absolutely.
So yeah, it's that was a good show. I have really enjoyed that. Really enjoyed that. So I'm going to try to have another former BFRO guy come in here next week.
Oh, that's going to be interesting.
If he comes in. And we had Carter Bouchard in here. Last week or so? That was
Brian,
really,
she said if you hear a whistle, they're trying to lure you into the woods.
yes.
I want you to come here.
Yeah, come on over here. Up in here.
Yes.
All up in here. Yeah.
So yes.
Like that forbidden finger, that forbidden finger that tells you, come on over here. Mm-hmm.
See, I thought I was crazy.
I don't think so. Not going to happen. Not going to happen.
But
So,
yeah,
So next week we'll try to get this other guy in, chit chat, and find out what's going on, what his thoughts are, and we'll see what happens.
sounds good to me.
Yeah, it's been a good show, and I appreciate it, Grizz.
Yeah, absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, have a great rest of your Sunday evening, and we will catch you on next edition. Take care.
How come Kentucky doesn't have a professional football team?
Oh, what do you mean?
Well, don't they? They don't have a professional
No, they
football
don't.
team.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I always wondered what's the deal with that.
Who knows?
And Louisville.
We'll catch you. We'll catch you
Louisville's
on
a
the
good
flip
city.
side. We'll find that
All
out.
right, my friend. All right,
Take care,
talk to you
ladies
next
and
time.
gentlemen. We'll see you, Val.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.